Welcome to Cult Connections. Let's see what we are taking a sideways look at today.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Cult Connections. It's a big welcome back to this week's guest. Now, not only is she a regular on the show, she loves her horror films, but she's also New Jersey's answer to the Mrs. the Slocum. It is Helen Barletto. How are you, Helen?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very well, Helen. Thank you so much. So this is the concluding part of the trilogy within the film series, their trilogy. And I was going to do Harry the Potter. However, thankfully, Helen came up with a great their subject to their cover, so I didn't have to do the Wizard in Their World, which, to be honest, I'm quite pleased about. So what we're going to talk about there today is Halloween, and Halloween's 4, 5, and 6. They all linked up. There's sort of character in them, but I think prior to that, Helen, we'll have to talk about Halloween films in their general, and obviously, the first one's a classic. The two afterwards are, I really like them as well.
Yeah.
But it all goes a bit sort of downhill afterwards, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. For sure. I think after Halloween 3, which is my favorite of the whole franchise, it just gets hard to watch. I mean, none of them are great. I do have a soft spot for H2O. But honestly, I don't have to watch any of the others ever again.
Well, I did make you watch these ones, to be fair.
You did.
But I mean, without John the Carpenter, it does seem to be a bit of a mess as well. They're sort of plot wise, and I think what's in sort of contrast to when we did Friday the 13th, which in their own way had managed to they sustain themselves throughout the 80s quite well.
Right.
And I would say built up a good their sort of mythos around their sort of Jason.
And it
I
felt
think,
like it was actually like continuing in the same franchise, whereas this one is just like all over the place. There's all different timelines. But like the
yeah,
Friday the 13th ones, it was like a steady, they all felt like the same franchise.
yeah. And I think for me, say to compare Michael with the sort of Jason now, the Jason gets sort of resurrected in quite out sort of landish ways, but they seem to fit the tone of the films. But in these ones, it's they just seem to be sort of making it up as they go along, and it doesn't really make any sense, and it doesn't really seem to fit either. So,
Right. Yeah. I mean, these 4 through 6 Halloween, it's not great. They're none of them are great movies. And it's kind of a shame.
yeah, there are some highlights, I would say, but obviously we will get there to that now. Now it's an interesting their franchise, as it were, because obviously, Halloween, came out. I think John sort of Carpenter really felt right. Okay, I'll make this film and then I'll go off and you know make lots of other films. He certainly never really thought about a long running sort of franchise. I certainly didn't think it would
Right.
spawn all of these films. The first one's an absolute their sort of classic. Energy and just really vibrant, and when you
Like a
watch it now,
Yeah, it's like a perfect autumn film. Just like the whole setting, the colors. It's just I love the first Halloween. I know some people do not because it is one of the slower films and there's not a lot of blood in it, but I think it's really I love it. I watch it
Mhm.
every year
Yeah,
for Halloween. So
yeah. They for me, two I think works really well. I know a lot of people have sort of issues with the pacing, but it actually feels like it did happen. Just the very next day sort of day kind of
right.
thing. It does. I think it actually does that well. And Halloween 3, dare I say it, and I do say this a lot because I don't really think of it as a like this sort of horror film. But it's a great sci-fi sort of thriller. That's you
I
know
mean, there's some spectacular gore in that film. I I don't know. Halloween 3 for some reason it's the one that I find myself rewatching the most out of the Halloween films. Um I don't know if it's because of Atkins, but I don't
and
know.
it's yeah, and let's face it, it stands on its own, and it's not bogged down by all of the other Halloween films around it. So
Right. I don't
yeah,
miss Michael Myers in it. Like I really don't.
but anyway, money always sort of talks. Someone did think, well, actually, we can still make money out of the Halloween. So in 1988, we did get Halloween 4: The Return of the Michael Myers, um, which introduces the Jamie character, um, who is actually in all three films, which is how it links them. Um,
So I do want to say, I'm not sure if you noticed this. You probably have, but it follows the Pink Panther trilogy from the 70s. So like the Pink Panther had Return of the Pink Panther, and
uh-huh.
then Revenge of the Pink Panther, and then Curse of the Pink Panther. And so that's what they did here, which is it's kind of funny. I don't know. I just noticed that watching it this time. So
I had not noticed that, Helen. That's absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much for getting that one. Um, um, Two sets of films that I would never have actually put there together at all. So
right. I don't know why they did it, but they did.
I think that's probably accident more than their sort of design, to be honest.
You think so?
I do, yeah. I can't imagine that's a the homage to the Pink Panther films. But I would love to be proved wrong. If someone knows they're different, please let us know.
Right.
Um, I would love that there to be there the case. So this one's set sort of 10 years after the first film, and the Michael Myers awakens on Halloween and returns to Haddonfield to kill his 7-year-old their niece. Now, I wanted to start out and Helen just have a chat about sort of child actors because the Danielle Harris is not she's not great in this one, is she?
Right. I mean, you don't want to like deride a child's performance, but I'm not a huge child actor fan. And for me, Jamie Lloyd as a character is tedious. She makes you miss Laurie Strode and having a character that like you truly care for. And because she's a child, she is perpetually like a damsel in distress. Whereas Laurie Strode, she has like these grand moments of where she fights back and like you rally behind her. And you don't really get that with Jamie Lloyd because she's just she has to run away and hide. So
Yeah, and dare I say it, and I mean Danielle Harris has gone on and done lots of good work.
oh yeah.
Regular their actor and acting there just now in some really good stuff. But yeah, she's not great in this one. I think there's one of the scenes. I think she runs away from the sort of bullies at the school, and she was meant to be they're sort of crying, and she was wiping away the tears, and yeah, it doesn't really. It doesn't work at all. I'm like, no, this
Those
isn't.
bullies were rough, though. They were like shouting at her, like Jamie's an orphan and her uncle's the boogeyman. I was like, oh, that's
They were absolutely horrible,
they
and I must admit, I was almost hoping that we would see them,
right.
there later on, getting they're a little bit of their sort of justice, but actually, thankfully, we don't. Um, we did kind of touch on this, I think, in the again in the Friday the 13th films, but should we really have child their sort of characters in these films? Do we feel that I often feel it doesn't really work. It's not really suitable.
Right. To see, like, you're like, is Michael really about to kill a child? Type of.
Yeah, haha, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, I mean, he doesn't. So
No,
they did have them in there, but he does not kill them.
no.
So
But I mean, he wants to. He wants to kill his niece. So
that's true.
yeah, haha. But did you have to make a 7 years old? That's the thing. It's just I don't know. It's just something I'm not too sort of keen on. There's enough sort of terror for their children in the real world without having to put them through these awful films. So, um, but the film itself, I think it goes through the motions, but there's a lack of sort of tension. I feel I don't really seem there to care about anyone in the film.
Right.
How about you, Helen? What's your
So
feelings about that?
out of the three, I think this one's probably the most well done. I think if I have to watch one of them, I would probably pick this one, just because it does kind of follow the same like formula as the first one, where there's a babysitter babysitting kids, and while Michael is after one of the kids and not the babysitter, it feels the most similar to the first one.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And I know the movie originally set out to be more bloodless, like the first one, and
Hmm.
then the producers called for more gore. So that's why there's some scenes, kind of like the first kill in this, with the guy in the ambulance, and Michael Myers puts his thumb like through the doctor's forehead. So
Yeah.
that wasn't like the original first kill.
I do quite like. I must admit, I quite like the sort of Doctor Loomis at the start, and he's chasing sort of Michael, or he's trying to find their Michael. The scenes at the garage, I think it is early on, and they just kind of miss one another. Um, I do like that, and it kind of builds it up. But then when you get back to Haddonfield, it just seems to go, quite sort of flat, and
Right.
it doesn't really work.
What is
Um,
kind of funny is that the prosthetic on Dr. Loomis's face, it changes throughout the entire film. Um, and it's because he was older, so it was uncomfortable, so they kept trying different things, but like the continuity of his scars are just completely different throughout the entire film.
I do feel in this one as well that their sort of presence is a bit under sort of used. Um, I was kind of waiting for a big sort of grandstand sort of moment with him, and I didn't really
Right.
get that in this one.
We don't you do have him kind of in the beginning. I mean, where he's like chasing him in the gas station, and you see him like in the mirror behind him, and Loomis is like, "Why now?" And
Yeah.
then he tries to shoot him, and then like the gas station blows up. So that's kind of like that was kind of like a finale, like explosion. Um, but it
Might have been
happens in the
nice, yeah,
beginning.
yeah. It might have been nicer actually to end on something like that rather than the ending there that we did get.
Right.
Yeah. Any sort of kills? I mean, obviously the films always sort of rely on the sort of kills. Have you got a favourite one in this one, Helen?
I do have a favorite in this one, and it's where Michael goes to the town's electrical substation and kills the worker by throwing him against the grid and electrocuting him.
Uh-huh.
So I actually made a note. Michael Myers is kind of like Mr. Magoo in this one because at the gas station, he like haphazardly causes an explosion, which blows up Loomis's car and manages to take down the telephone wires leading to Haddonfield. And then by doing this at the substation, he's taken out Haddonfield's power. So he's either like the luckiest guy with this or a criminal genius. Somehow he took out the power, the telephone, like there's no contact to it. And it's just like by chance.
I don't think he is any sort of the sort of genius by any means, but yeah, that bit does work. My favourite, I think, it's the sheriff's their daughter.
Okay.
They're in the house and he impales her on the shotgun. I did quite like that
Right.
one.
Yeah.
And she wasn't a particularly nice,
No, she was
I guess, sort of character.
stealing Rachel's man.
Yeah. So I did like that. One of the things I wanted there to touch on, and now I wouldn't say that I don't know how you feel about this, Helen, but I don't know if the Halloween films give much social, their sort of commentary on, say, small town life in the estates, but was actually kind of taken by the fact that a lot of the town, their members actually went, um, uh, they went and formed their own their vigilante, their sort of group. Now
Right.
we see that actually goes wrong, and quite sort of tragically wrong, but is it were you sort of struck by that, or what sort of thoughts did you have about that one?
So I feel like America vigilanteism is
Uh-huh.
kind of different from like what you're used to.
Yeah.
So technically vigilante groups are like illegal, but they are protected by our constitution. So like the Oak Keepers we have, and that's like a right wing militia group, and it's in a bunch of states here.
Hmm.
Um, and there's just laws protecting and even advocating for them, like Florida with our stand your ground law. It's not really something that strikes me anymore because I'm so used.
You're
I see
used
it a
to it.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like usually vigilante justice is like indicative of a larger problem such as like mistrust of the government or like malice or apathy on part of the police, or it's in response to communal trauma, which is kind of what I think this one is in the
Hmm.
movie. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like the locals in the mist. I don't know if you've seen the movie The
Hmm.
Mist,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
where they're like banded together because of something terrible, and then it leads to violence against the innocents, which is what happened in this one as well.
Yeah.
So shockingly, they killed the wrong person.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I think as well. I mean, yeah. uh, Again, as a the overseas sort of viewer, so from a European their perspective, I think as well that this is very sort of different to what we would have
Right.
in the sort of Britain. Certainly, you wouldn't have anything like this really. And one of the big factors, obviously, is the size of the place, but also we don't have access to their guns, and I know we have spoken about this there before, but Britain's a fairly safe place because idiots do not have their firearms, which I will say this is a good thing. Um, you
Right.
could learn a lot from that, but it's a bit sort of too late. I would be absolutely shocked if anyone who lived in their town actually has a firearm whatsoever. It's just not a thing. Um, so there, thankfully, we don't form their sort of gangs and go out and
No open
try and
carry laws.
do it exactly. We don't just go out and try to they sort of shoot their people. But I was very struck by that, and it did feel, and like you say, it's still very sort of relevant. This is something that still goes on. I mean, we've seen it.
Right.
Um, dare I say it, even with the sort of the storming of
The
the
capital.
Senate building, was it? Yeah,
Mhm.
not that long ago, people taking their own sort of views and going off and actually doing what they want, and
Yeah,
um,
the Oak Keepers that I mentioned, they were
yeah,
actually one of the groups that stormed the Capitol.
I
So
can imagine. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So there we go. Halloween 4. It is actually fairly sort of crap, but it is still very relevant. Um, I am sort of taken by the ending because it's at the end we see Michael and the police are basically they shot him up, and he's meant to be in some sort of he's in a hole in the ground or something like that, isn't he? Or he's supposed to be.
right. He like kind of they have like this scene of everyone shooting him, and then he just sinks into the ground.
Yeah. Um, but Halloween 5 actually sort of so actually they directly takes that one up.
Right.
But what actually happens is Michael slides off into the river, and he gets washed sort of down in this. Um,
He literally floats away to safety.
he does, yeah, sort of Jason style, funnily enough.
Right.
And someone there picks him up, and they kind of nurses him there back to health.
For no
Um,
reason.
yeah,
You see
yeah,
this
why
like
would you?
gigantic person who has a mask on and like a bunch of bullet holes, and you're gonna take him in and just be like, let me get you right. Like
So just say 12 months later, we do get Halloween 5, The Revenge of the Michael Myers. And it's fairly much the same their cast as well. And like I say, it follows on. It's meant to be there 12 months later as well. So we do see Michael, he floats off down the river. Um, Now, talking about child characters, they sort of Helen, and maybe this is a good thing because Jamie in this one, again played by the Danielle Harris, but she is the mute for most of the film. So is that a good
right.
thing?
So it seems like an attempt to kind of curb her performance and not have her really need dialogue, just because she can't compete in scenes with like Michael Myers or Dr. Loomis. So like you can't really like you're not going to be focusing on her when either one of those characters is in the scene with her. So now she's mute and she's like making just like a bunch of noises and like kind of having these almost seizures whenever she's like telepathically linked with Michael. So it
Hmm.
kind of brings the focus back onto her without having dialogue.
Now I found this part they're sort of fascinating, and is this a way to try and sort of justify there's sort of Michael, how he lives, how he keeps on sort of coming back. But this, like you say, Helen, this sort of like this sort of telepathic element that we now seem there to have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and for me, it feels sort of tacked on. I don't really like it.
Right.
I think Michael should just be a sort of crazy bloke, and not try and sort of add on maybe a sort of supernatural element or something like that.
Yeah, they don't really give much of a reason for it until 6, when there's like another kid that's kind of telepathically linked to the Thorn cult. But the I don't know. I don't know why they did it. I agree. It feels kind of strange. Like in the first two, he's just this like beast, like creature that just keeps going and like killing, and then in these, he turns into like this vessel for the Thorn cult and
Yeah,
doing what they want him to do.
yeah, and obviously we will sort of talk more about that for 6, but for 5. Now, I know in the past we've spoken about the sort of rules of a slasher film, which these are. And one of my favourite rules is that basically that most of the sort of characters, or the young sort of characters, are not very, they're sort of likable, and we
Right.
have a good range of not very likable their sort of characters here, don't we?
We do. Like I had said, Tina is actually my favorite character, and she's widely hated. Um, I know I'm not sure why, but if you if you type her name into Google, it's just like why Tina is the most unlikable character of Halloween 5. Um, and I thought she was fun. I do agree she's kind of a weak protagonist, but we don't even that doesn't even get redeemed in 6.
Yeah.
So I
I think for me as well, and sort of following on, and 4 and 5 are very closely linked, but um, the Rachel, who's Jamie's step sort of sister,
mhm.
a big step their sister, she gets sidelined very early on. She gets killed off, and like you say, sort of Tina comes in, but that doesn't
She's
really make
right.
sort of
She's
too much sense for me. Why,
I know
know?
Rachel was definitely more like a Lori character, and
Yeah.
Tina's kind of like a valley girl. She's fun. She's like flirting with everyone. She's just kind of wild. I don't know why they picked her to be like the main protagonist aside from Jamie, but I don't know. I like her. I'd be friends with her.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, she is fun. You're very right. Now, her boyfriend, the Mikey.
Yes.
Now he's an asshole, and
He's a terrible human.
yeah,
His death is definitely my favorite
it's
out
it's
of
my favorite as well. Yeah.
yeah. Where he goes to hit Michael with the crowbar and he's like trick or treat and then gets impaled in the head with this big fork, like gardening fork.
Now what I did now, now what I did like about this, and the actual build up there to it. So the Mikey's got quite a nice their car.
He
He
does.
likes to drive it around, to drive it fast. He's very so proud of it, and then Michael just sort of comes along, and he the keys it, as it were. He actually puts a great big scratch in it, and
Right. He like taunts him, which is not really something you would think that he would do. Like, why is he keying this kid's car? Why isn't he just killing him?
yeah, but to be fair, I think I actually really like that bit. I think I would probably
Oh,
do that as well. So, not that I'm advocating, doing that whatsoever. Absolutely not. But Mikey is. I think just to add to it, because he's not nice. I actually quite like seeing him getting there killed off, and to sort of taunt him first as well by scratching his their car is, that actually builds it up really, really nicely. And then after that, we see Michael, driving around.
Right. He picks up Tina, and then shockingly, when she asks to stop for cigarettes, he stops so she can buy cigarettes.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah,
um,
and and she doesn't even figure out that this isn't their Mikey actually. Dare I say it, Michael Myers is probably a better boyfriend than what Mikey would be. So,
right. He's just sitting there breathing heavily, not speaking to her, and she's like, "Yeah, this is my boyfriend." Has
um,
no idea.
yeah. So obviously it's a Halloween day night. There are parties going on. Tina's off to a party. Her their two friends are there who we did meet earlier. Um, Again, talking about not very likable, their sort of characters, because these two aren't either,
Right.
are they?
No, Spitz and Sammy.
Yeah, and I'm quite happy to see them. They sort of get it as well, but
Right.
I was a little bit sort of taken aback, Helen, because not with the sort of kittens either. I
You
didn't
didn't
really
like
want.
the kittens?
Oh, I love the kittens, but did I have to be around all that horrible? They sort of
Uh,
go when
yeah. I mean, if I was Sammy, I would have followed the kitten too. So, and then once you see like the box of kittens, there was no way I was leaving the barn. Um, but then of course they have sex, so they have to die.
Yeah,
Um, and then one gets impaled with a pitchfork, and then Sammy dies. She's scythed, which is weird.
yeah,
Again, Michael Myers doesn't have his knife in this one, so he just uses whatever he can find.
yeah. Although he does have a knife there later on,
Right.
yeah, and I must admit, probably in this film, the actual the end. Well, not well. Well, this is the thing. So, um, so Jamie and the Loomis are back at the house at their original house. It is the derelict. Um, Loomis is trying to lure Michael there, hopefully to their kill him. And I wish this is where the film had actually ended. So I do feel that the final scene with the Loomis and the Michael actually works quite well. So uh, you
Where
know,
he just keeps repeating, die, die, die. And then
yeah,
he has a stroke and then falls on top of Michael.
yeah. But I mean, he's whacking shit out of him, and but
Right.
but how many houses have a big sort of a big the metal um
Chain.
yeah in
Yeah.
them? That's a bit weird, isn't it?
It was weird. Where'd it come from? But he used it to trap Michael. And then he shoots him, and then he beats him with wood panels, and then it is definitely kind of like a showdown. But then we do get the next scene, which um, the mysterious man kills all of the cops with a machine gun and frees Michael from jail.
Yeah, and then it all goes. And now this is what gets me. So the film they make is here. They're obviously thinking about their future. So we've got this ending with the man. He's in the long the coat and the hat.
And the metal toed boots with like the I forget what they're called. The like round thing on cowboy boots.
Spurs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he has those boots.
Yeah.
And we never see his face. We just see him from like the neck down when he gets off the bus. Um, and then we see him like a few other times. And then obviously in the end, when he just kills everyone.
Yeah. But this seems odd. It seems odd to like I say that the filmmakers makers are obviously thinking, right, how do we expand on this? How do we keep going with it? Um, the Michael at one point we see he has a mark on him,
Mm-hmm.
and then they expand on that in the next film. Now, Halloween 5's directed by Dominique Othen and Gerard, who directed Omen 4,
Oh, okay.
which is awful, which is a terrible film.
I don't think I've seen that one. Is
That's the
that the one
one.
with Sam Neill or is that 3?
No, that's 3. So
Okay.
four was a made-for-TV their movie, and it's about Damien's daughter, I think it is.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I definitely
It's
I have not
no,
seen.
it's not. To be fair, Helen, it's not really worth watching. It's not gonna add anything.
Okay.
However, um, 7 years later, I think 89. So Halloween 6 there comes along, as we mentioned. This is now the curse of Michael Myers.
Yes.
So we've got Halloween 6. Um, so there's a big sort of gap, from when these films were made, but it does they develop, and not very this successfully, I think, this whole theme of now there is this, like you mentioned, the cult of the thorn, and um, for me, it did feel a bit sort of omen-like, almost
Okay.
like the cult are. They sort of revere Michael for some sort of reason. He's almost like he's some sort of this sort of deity type figure.
Right. Yeah. I they kind of I it feels like it grew out of Halloween 2, which had like a very vague pagan connection when Michael like broke into the school and wrote Samhain on the wall.
Hmm.
But you're never really like you don't know who the cult is. You don't really know what their motives are. For 2 movies, it's Michael trying to kill Jamie, and then she's involved in like a pagan birth ritual. Um, and then they don't really explain like the connection with the Strode boy in this one.
No,
Um, and I watched both versions of 6, and I still don't understand the connection with
no,
him,
no,
with
no.
Danny Strode, and why he also has telepathic links to the cult.
Yeah. So it's funny, Helen. I think so. So we've gone from. So if we think back to the original Halloween, Michael's just a a this sort of disturbed child. He obviously grows up. He's had lots of trauma and so on. He's on their stable, and that leads to the sort of killings. We end up here, and there's the telepathy and the weird sort of cult, and it almost seems like there's the mark of their thorn, which just seems
Right.
nonsense. I think it just
And it's not even like a tattoo, which in 5 you kind of think it's a tattoo, but then in the producer's cut of 6, it actually ends up appearing on Dr. Loomis as well. So it's just like a supernatural mark of the Thorn cult.
yeah,
It just appears.
yeah. Which again, it makes me feel that like the film they make this year of Watch. the Omen, or say the Exorcist, and I'm thinking, right, how are we going to spin it? How can we make Michael come back all these sort of
Right.
times, and expand on that? But it doesn't, for me, it doesn't work. I think Halloween films work when they're more sort of grounded. It
Yeah.
is a Halloween there. And Michael's just a crazy bloke and he goes around, stabbing people. You add in all of these bits and, it just feels like sort of nonsense, really.
Yeah. I agree. I know some people really love Six and Curse of Michael Myers, and we actually have a friend who has the Thorn cult like tattooed on him, and he loves these movies. So they definitely have their fan base. I am not part of it.
I I I can see why, because to be fair, when I watched this one there again, I got a sense of sort of fun, of sort of bonkers, sort of fun, Helen. The film doesn't make sense. It's really stupid. But you
You
you know
get
you can watch it just for those their sort of elements. You
right.
switch your brain off, or don't think about a film there too much, and it's daft. I
And
think
of
that's
course, Paul Rudd in an introducing credit.
yeah.
So it actually came out the same year as Clueless,
Yeah.
but he's made to be like the biggest creep. Like, I guess he's like an anti-hero in this, because every time we see him, he's just like staring ominously, or like spying on the neighbors, or
Yeah.
like stealing a baby. Like, he's just a creepy person in this, and we're supposed to think he's the hero.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like sort of halfway through, it's like, right, let's sort of turn them round, and actually, this is a person that we're,
Right.
um, rooting for now. And obviously, the references that he's there, Danny, uh, back in in
Oh,
the original film, who,
Tommy Doyle. Yeah.
Tom, yeah,
Hmm.
who obviously Laurie's there babysitting for.
Right.
But again, that feels quite sort of spurious and sort of tacked on as well. Again, it's another element that's like, oh well, we'll just reference these things in
Who
the
could
the,
we
the
bring back
past.
from the first?
Yeah. Um, a weird thing about Paul Rudd, Helen, and I don't know if you got this feeling. So, Paul Rudd's about the same age as me. Okay, now,
Okay.
now he doesn't look it. I mean, I look my age. Paul Rudd doesn't. However, seeing a very young Paul Rudd in this, he almost looks like like a plastic version of sort of Paul Rudd. I don't know if you got that. I'm almost like,
I
is this real?
I didn't really get that. Probably because also seen him in Clueless, which was from the same year. So he
Yeah,
he definitely has like a very smooth baby face.
yeah,
Um, but he still looked like Paul Rudd.
yeah. He seems a bit sort of wax like, almost like
Right.
like a wax work or something. It's probably because he's got so many scenes at the start where he's just staring and being a bit.
Being a
But
bit creepy.
yeah, basically, yeah. Um, And now, this is the Jamie trilogy. However, unfortunately, Jamie actually gets sort of killed off fairly quickly.
So she does get killed off quickly in the theatrical version.
Uh-huh.
Um, but in the unrated producer's cut, which is actually the original cut of the
Hmm.
film, um, she doesn't get killed in the farmhouse. She gets wounded, but she survives, and then gets killed in the hospital later on. She gets shot in the face, or, which is just a strange choice.
Yeah.
That was so.
And they to think, well, actually, that's been the main sort of character for 3 films. So that's quite a sad way to go out, really, isn't it? I would, yeah. I
Right.
don't think that really does her sort of justice.
I definitely like her theatrical death better. It just makes more sense where she's like impaled on the spikes, and then Michael turns on the farm, the machine,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's how she dies.
Yeah.
Because it just, I don't know why. Like, just her getting shot in the face is in the hospital. Like, it just seems like it doesn't make any sense. Like, why did they keep her so much longer just to kill her off again in like a less impressive way?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that probably sums up what a sort of mess this film actually is. In both their versions, neither of them really
Right.
make any real sense, do they? So now an interesting part. Now, one of my favourite bits, and again, talking about unlikable their characters getting they're sort of killed off. Now, it's not a great sort of kill per se, but I do like John the Strode getting
Yes,
yeah,
the dad character
yeah,
who's just the biggest jerk in the
yeah,
entire
uh-huh,
movie.
yeah,
But yeah, so even his death is different from the theatrical to the producer's cut, and the theatrical again has the better kill. So in the theatrical, like, he gets thrown against the electrical circuit and his head explodes, and it's a good explosion.
yeah,
Um, and then in the producer's cut, he just kind of like, he gets thrown against the electrical circuit and just gets electrocuted and just kind of like goes to sleep.
and just flops over.
Right.
Yeah. Oh well, I'm glad. I'm glad that they did that because he is absolutely horrible.
Oh,
He's
he
not nice
is.
at all. Yeah. And this almost got me thinking, Helen, about the film, because in Halloween 5 we see the Strode house,
Mhm.
and it's a mess. It's been empty there for so long. It's they're falling there to bits. They make it worse as they go along. So walls get smashed in, and all the windows are absolutely battered. But for some reason, this new
The
the
Strode
branch
family,
of the Strode family who
right,
we've never heard of.
moves into
Uh,
the Michael Myers house.
yeah. So they do it up. I mean, I would have just knocked it down.
Right.
To be honest. So I mean, why on earth, do up this their house?
I don't know. And it's funny because like the dad, the first time you see him, he's like mad because they like put something with Michael Myers like in front of the house, and he's like, enough of this Michael Myers bullshit. And he's like knocking down
Hmm.
whatever the kids threw up.
Yeah. Well, don't live in the
Right.
Michael Myers house then. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely doesn't make this sense at all. But let's face it, these films don't. So I think that really sums up the whole sort of theme, is that these films don't make sense, and the 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 film they makers obviously didn't spend too much time actually thinking it out. So we shouldn't either, Ellen. I don't think
That's
we should expend too much sort of brain cells on it. Um, the
so
one,
going back to Jamie's kill in the producer's cut, I think it's actually what they did is because the theatrical, they kind of take out a lot of like the culty things and like the more sleazy of of the plot points. So like the producer's cut, the reason she's in the hospital is so we can see her having a dream where she has sex with Michael Myers. So we're led to believe that the baby is his.
Okay.
So he does have sex with his niece because
Uh-huh.
of the cult, and then
Yeah.
so I guess that's why they
Uh, uh,
kept it in the producer's cut.
uh, yeah. I'm kind of glad that was not in there, because that actually does bring me to a good point. So in Halloween 4, Jamie's only meant to be about 7 years old, 8 years old, and it does say Halloween 6 is meant to be, so if she's 8 and 4, should be 9 and 5. So if my math is correct, she should only be 15 at the most in 6. That makes it feel even more sort of creepy and not right. Now,
Yeah, it's a
now,
little bit
now,
bleak.
yeah. Now the actress who plays Jamie is not a child. This is not a, she's young, but she certainly looks old enough to,
Right.
be sort of pregnant. But that just adds on a whole other layer of sort of weird, to be honest.
Which makes sense why they cut it out of the theatrical version.
Yeah, yeah, and to be honest, if it was up to me, Helen, I would have cut that out of any version. Um,
Yeah.
I don't mind sort of weird, but no, I'm not that honest. No.
Yeah. You watch Halloween 6, the producer's cut, and you'll get Halloween incest, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I have done a long sort of time ago. It seems in my brain I have probably blanked out a lot of that. I am going to go back and watch it, just for the horror show of it. A
It's
nice,
rough. It's a rough
yeah,
one.
yeah. A nice way maybe just to round off, Ellen. And there is a line. I don't know if you picked up on it, but there is a line in this film, which has not been explored further in the Halloween franchise, but the concept of it, and we have spoken about this ourselves a little bit, has been explored in some other horror franchises. Um, but there is a reference to Michael Myers in space.
Is there?
There is at the start, yeah, yeah.
What?
With
I
over,
did not.
I think it's on the radio show,
Okay.
and one of the callers actually talks about their Michael Myers in their space. So
That's fun. I didn't pick up on it.
yeah, haha. I
But that's
thought I
funny.
thought that you might have done, but because obviously we have seen lots of other long running horror franchises that do end up in
Yes.
their space, and
All of the good ones do.
yeah, and that is something that we will actually talk about in the future, Helen. But I did think that was a nice their reference. So go back and watch Halloween 6 again. I know that you're absolutely
Oh,
red dying there too.
I
And
watched it twice. I'm good. I'm good for a few years.
but yes, it does mention Michael in their space, and actually maybe after the the their trilogy finishes off, we could maybe actually get that. I think that is where things should should
As
they go. I think we should
as
get
they
Michael in
should.
their space. Yeah,
It
definitely.
it should definitely end in space.
Yeah.
And then he can become Mecha Michael
Aha.
with with a metal mask.
Yeah. Maybe some sort of weird sort of the and sort of droid type sort of Michael Myers figures. He he could have a he could have a data mask from their Star Trek. I think that might actually work. That's
I mean,
that's
yeah,
fairly
they could
creepy.
definitely do that.
So anyway, on that, and actually on that ridiculous note, I think that's actually a good way there to end it, because these are three ridiculous films. So once again, Helen, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on.
You are very welcome, and no doubt, I mean, we will be back soon. It might be in space, it might not, but whatever it will be, Helen,
Fingers crossed for space.
fingers crossed for space, but whatever it will be fun. So thank you very much, Helen.
Yes. Thank you.
And thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.